All right, guys. So let's go ahead and start our lesson for the day. All right. You guys should have taken your first exam in my class last week. All right. So hope y'all did well. I think we'll start class by mostly going over the exam, talking about your expectations, talking about if you guys are happy with your scores and all that fun stuff. All right. But as for the lesson, I'm going to go ahead and begin doing that right now. So guys, now that we're done with period one, remember 1200 to 1450, it's time for us to move on to period two, okay? So as I said, we'll start class today with a warm up and we're gonna talk about the exam. And then we're gonna move on to period two, okay? The best way to do that actually is going ahead and skipping unit three and going ahead and starting with unit four, okay? What I want to do is I want to actually set up, pretty much everything that we talk about from here on out will be somehow connected to Europe, okay? So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to set up how Europe becomes a major power player in this sort of world domination. And the way we do that is we talk about transoceanic interconnections, okay? So guys, as I said, we have finished period one. All right, so that's awesome. Basically, 1/4 of your class is finished, which is not true at all, but content-wise, you will be, you're done with period one. So we will be relying on period one when we do more of our writing samples, because you're going to need to know material from previous periods in AP World History. But for now, you can kind of put your G-Persia charts aside and you can start getting ready to talk about land-based empires and transoceanic interconnections, okay? And as I said, guys, today we are going to talk mostly about Unit 4, okay? We're going to actually skip Unit 3 for now, but don't worry, we will get back, okay? So guys, we're moving on to period 2, and the years we're talking about in period 2 are 1450 to 1750. Okay, so make sure you have that drilled into your head. All right, period 1 is 1200 to 1450. Period 2 is 1450 to 1750. And as you guys can see from this little exam weighting, we're getting into heavily weighted territory. Okay, we're getting into territory that the College Board AP World History exam will be using more of. Okay, it doesn't mean you should forget everything from period one, but it does mean that you're going to see maybe some more multiple choice based questions on period two, maybe some more writing samples from period two. So I just want you to keep that in mind as we continue, okay? All right, guys, so I know I said we weren't going to do memes, and I'm going to maybe slowly start to integrate them back into the class. And the best way to do that actually is right now. So what you're going to find in AP World History is that we utilize about 3 different historical thinking skills, okay? You don't have to write this down, but we will talk about similarities and differences. We will talk about cause and effect, and we will talk about this one right here, change and continuity. Okay, change and continuity is very important in history. Okay, it's kind of like probably one of the most important skills. What continues on throughout the different periods, and what stays the same, and then what changes as history continues to change itself. Okay, so I need you guys to, you don't have to write this down, but I need you guys to understand that the reason we're going ahead and jumping into Unit 4 today rather than starting with the Unit 3 is that I think it's really important to go ahead and show the change in continuity between Europe, okay? So last week we did period 1 Europe, and I'm sure many of you were not impressed by the state of Europe in period 1. Right? Europe's not really trading. Europe's not really creating innovations. Its social structure is very rigid, the feudalistic society. Europe's constantly at war with itself. And finally, it goes to war with the Middle East, with the Crusades. And kind of the one good thing that comes out of the Crusades is this new appetite for luxury goods, right? So Europeans realize, hey, we want some of that good. We want some of that silk from China, porcelain from China. We want some of that black pepper from India. Okay. And so it doesn't seem like that would be important, but it really is. So again, guys, period one Europe's going to be kind of weak and frail and sad looking. But as you will see today, we're going to set up this crazy paradigm shift where Europe is going to be frail and weak and backwards. And then by the end of period two, it's going to be this major player, major strong house. Okay. At some point, and this is going to be very critical for AP World History, Europe's world domination is going to set the stage not only for period two, but period three and period four. Okay, we are still seeing the influence of European domination today in 2020. Okay, so what's going to cause this paradigm shift? How is Europe going to go from, sad SpongeBob to, awesome Rocky type SpongeBob? All right, well, that's the question we're going to answer today. Okay? All right, guys, so you do have to start writing this. As I said, we're going to topic 4, or unit 4, and we're going to start with topic 4.2. Okay? So here are our historical developments. And this one's a little bit of a refresher. Okay? So again, the Crusades. The Crusades are going to be when the Christian church mobilizes peasants, knights from across Europe to go into the Middle East and retake the Holy Land, right? Well, that's besides the point, guys. What's going to happen is that Europeans are going to develop a taste for trade and for those luxury goods that come with trade, okay? So Europeans are really going to want to find ways to engage in this trade, okay? So what's going to also come with the Crusades and the influence of these Europeans who've gone to the Middle East and come back is that you're going to see some new innovations. They're finally going to reach Europe. So we've talked about these guys. We've talked about the compass is coming from China, the astrolabe, all right? The astrolabe tells you where you are in conjunction with the stars. Latine sails, okay? This stuff, which is going to actually make trade on the Indian Ocean much easier, is slowly going to trickle into Europe. And Europeans are going to use these innovations, okay? This understanding of global wind patterns. That's the other one. We talked about the monsoons. All of these things are going to combine and make Europeans more curious, all right? Europeans are going to actually go ahead and start innovating their own technologies. They're going to build upon these innovations. And one of the innovations that they'll create, and this is very important, guys, is the caravel. Okay, I know you've heard of the caravel before. We talk about it every year when we celebrate Columbus Day. The caravel is going to be a native innovation to Europe. It's going to be a smaller version of the yunk, and it's going to be quicker and easier to maneuver in the wind. Okay, so last week when you guys looked at the pictures of Admiral Zheng Yi, the Chinese explorer, his giant yunka ship, right, guys? Well, a much smaller version of that, and you'll have a caravel. Okay, so I wanted you guys to get a sense of what these 3 different ships look like. Now, we've talked about all 3. We've talked about the dhow, which comes from the Middle East. All right, that little triangular thing is the latine sail. All right. We've talked about the caravel. So that's going to be the European version of these fast-moving ships. Okay. And we talked about the yunk, okay? It's the Chinese ship. Now, these ships you'll still see these ships in the Indian Ocean, but in period 2, the caravel's really gonna dominate the conversation because again, Europeans are suddenly gonna come out of the closet and all of a sudden they're going to be major explorers, major power players, okay? So, guys, again, when you take Europe from period 1 and you start to realize what's happening in period 2, you're going to see this crazy shift, okay? What you're going to see is that your new powerful European states are going to form. So last week we talked about how Europe is small and fragmented into tiny little feudalistic domes. Okay, well, that's true. But what's going to happen in period 2 is that these states are going to start to come together, right? They're going to have more powerful monarchs, right? So you're going to see states like Spain, okay, Portugal, Great Britain, the Netherlands. It's not on here, but it's right around here, and France, okay? And these major European states are going to become more and more powerful, and they're going to develop more and more resources, okay? They're going to gain more and more money from actually engaging in this trade, and this money will be used to fund voyages of exploration, okay? So, when we talked about the Silk Road and when we talked about the Trans-Saharan trading route, I told you guys that when elites get a little bit of a taste for the luxury goods, they're gonna want more and more and more. And that's happening here in these European states, guys. So, European states, like the ones I just told you about, they've developed a little bit of a taste for these luxury goods from the Crusades. And they're going to want to find ways to get a hold of these luxury goods from China and India, okay? The problem is that they can't really, it's very expensive to cross on the Silk Road. Europe's a lot further than some of the other smaller places on the Silk Road. So what's going to happen is that the monarchs of these places are going to start to look for alternative routes. So they're going to look for alternative sea-based routes. So can we engage in this trade via boat? Okay. And that is where you're going to see a lot more of these states funding voyages of exploration. So again, these are not cheap at all. And states are going to need to have resources to fund these. All right, guys. So a couple things. I just mentioned to you that Spain is one of these powerful political states that will be engaging in this voyages of exploration. But I need you guys to know that in order to get to that point, Spain's going to have to do something pretty powerful. Okay. So last week when we talked about Spain, I told you that Spain was heavily influenced by the Moors, who were Muslim. Okay. So remember, when the Islamic states were expanding, merchants were bringing Islam all over. Islam actually came into Spain. All right. So it came into Spain via North Africa. So right here. All right. And so at some point, all of this area in Spain is going to be practicing Muslim. Okay. But slowly over time, you're going to have Christian states driving out the Muslim Moors. Okay. And it's going to be during a series of wars called the Reconquista. So I don't speak Spanish, but I know some of you guys do. And in English, it's the Reconquest. Okay. So ironically, by 1492, which is the year you all know as when Columbus sailed the ocean blue, Spain is going to have driven all of these Muslim Moors out of Spain. And what's going to happen is that all of these little tiny kingdoms in Spain are going to be reunited under Ferdinand and Isabella. Okay, so Spanish king and queen, and they are going to reunite Spain as a Christian state. So it's going to be a very powerful Christian state. It's going to have a lot of resources. Okay, and why is this important? It's going to make Spain a major power player. Okay, so before this point, Spain is expending its resources in fighting the Muslims. Okay, it's expending its resources in pushing the Muslim Moors out, but now it can shift its goals and values to actually engaging in these voyages of exploration. Okay. The first state that will be engaging in these voyages of exploration is going to be Portugal. All right, so Portugal's that tiny little state right there on the Iberian Peninsula with Spain. So why Portugal? All right, it's a good question. Ultimately, what you need to know is that Portugal is going to be the first European state to do this. And what they're going to do is that they're going to try to find a maritime-based route. And they're going to do it because they're going to go around Africa. Okay. But as we talked about, Africa is enormous, guys. It's significantly larger than maps tend to give it credit for. Okay. So again, they're going to look for a way around this gigantic continent, and they're going to look for a way to engage in the spice trade via a maritime-based trading route, kind of like what's going on in the Indian Ocean, right? So they know if that they can get around this big continent, they can start trading with these Eastern African city-states, okay, and then eventually make their way up into South Asia. Okay, so as I said, guys, they're looking for these maritime-based trading routes because Muslims are controlling the Middle East. Okay, so after the Crusades, Muslims are not exactly excited to have a bunch of Christian Europeans trading within their territories. So Muslims are going to block European Christians after the Crusades. So the only way they're going to be able to engage in this Silk Road and Indian Ocean-based trading route is if they find a way via the ocean. Okay? So the first thing that's going to happen, guys, is Portugal is going to establish. So they're going to actually come out and they're going to start trying to get around Africa. While they're doing that, they're not very successful at first. They're going to start establishing close trading partnerships with Western African kingdoms. Okay, this is going to be important later on because we're going to have a very serious trade going on between the Portuguese and these Western African kingdoms. Okay. But what will happen, guys, is that you're going to have explorers and they'll kind of start to come around Africa and they'll explore the coast. And most of the time, they'll make it about halfway or a quarter or whatever, and they'll have to turn back because they've run out of supplies. Okay. But eventually, what will happen is that one explorer will finally make it to the tip of Africa. And by then, we'll know that we can actually get around this continent. Okay. So here's what you need to know. Now, guys, I told you, we don't really need to know a lot of names in AP World History, and that when I give you a name, you should know it. Well, today, you really only need to know the name of Christopher Columbus. Okay, so this guy right here. It's the guy that your city is named after. But I'm going to give you a few other explorer names. I'd like you to write them down because I think they'll be helpful. I think they'll be very helpful for you to envision what the goals were of these European nations and the men that they charged to explore. Okay, so in 1488, a Portuguese man, Bartholomew Diaz, discovered the Cape of Good Hope. Okay, so the Cape of Good Hope is that little tip at the bottom of Africa. So that right here. All right, fun fact. Originally, Diaz named it the Cape of Storms because it was very stormy and it was a little scary to cross around. A lot of shipwrecks in this area. But it was eventually renamed the Cape of Good Hope because the Portuguese were so elated when they found this crossing. Okay, because I mean this signaled great hope to them because now once we sailed around this point, we can actually start engaging in these spice trades. Okay, we can start engaging in these trades with East Africa and South Asia. Okay, so again, Portugal's pumped. Okay, they finally know how big Africa is. All of those explorers that for decades were sailing along the coast of Western Africa were also mapping the coast of West Africa. So now Portugal's the only nation in the world that knows about the coast of Western Africa, and it pretty much also knows how big Africa is. All right, so you know all of Western Africa all the way down to the tip. Okay, so in 1498, so that year is important, a Portuguese sailor named Vasco da Gama is going to discover a route to India. Okay, so building on what Diaz did when he discovered the Cape of Good Hope, da Gama is going to actually sail all the way around the Cape of Good Hope, and he's going to get into India. Okay, and what he's going to do is he's going to bring back black pepper. Okay, the kind of stuff that when you go to a restaurant, you dump it all over the table and you don't think anything of it. Black pepper is going to be a hot commodity. Okay, when he brings back all of this black pepper from India, it's going to sell for equal weight of gold. That is how important these spices are. Okay, so what I need you guys to know right now besides that is pepper, okay, and that is the Cape of Good Hope. You need to understand that Columbus's journey, all right, Christopher Columbus, who we'll talk about in just a minute, is going to sail in 1492. So that year is going to be between when Diaz discovers the Cape of Good Hope and when Vasco da Gama discovers a route to India. All right, why is this important? It just shows you how close all of these major voyages of exploration are. And it shows you how important and how quickly things are going to change. Okay? So I'm not really sure why that cut that off, but what you need to know is that Portugal is going to be the world's first trading post empire. Sounds kind of funny, right? So Portugal's not really going to establish a huge, large colony. Okay, they will establish one in Brazil, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But what you need to know in period 2 is that Portugal is mostly going to be interested in controlling the trade through these trading posts. Okay, so rather than this like world domination or like giant colonies all over Africa or South Asia, instead they're going to just strategically control certain trading posts. All right, like Zanzibar or Goa, Calcutta. Okay. And so what you need to understand is that this is going to be a very different world. Okay, so in period 1, what you might remember is that the Indian Ocean trading route is going to be free. It's going to be untaxed. Okay, people are going to be able to trade freely. There'll be no problems. But in period 2, the Portuguese are going to dominate this trading route. Okay, they are not going to be, there's free and open trading is going to be gone. Okay, so South Asians and Eastern Africans are going to be trading with the Portuguese only or through the Portuguese. All right, they pretty much put a halt to all of this free trade. So this is where you're going to see kind of the first time where you see Europeans kind of coming in and taking over something. So make sure you understand that. So as I said, guys, even though Portugal is more like, it's mostly just a trading post empire, they do kind of procure Brazil by mistake. All right, so it's the only major overseas territory that the Portuguese are going to control. So what you need to understand is that Brazil, as you know, is this big chunk of land in South America. Brazil's going to be a major sugar colony. All right, so they're going to grow a lot of sugar. So sugar will also be a major commodity that will be traded. Okay, but sugar is heavily labor intensive. So what will happen is that the Portuguese realize that in order to maximize this brand new colony in Brazil, they're going to need really cheap labor. And so what they're going to do is they're going to go back to their new pals in West Africa. Okay, these little states that they established close partnerships with when they were exploring the Western African coast, trying to get away to India. Okay. And what they're going to do is they're going to actually start the enslaved people's trade. Okay, the slave trade to the Americas. So we talked maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago about the Indian Ocean trading route. Okay, where people were traded from this area up into the Middle East and South Asia. So this is the first time we will talk about the transatlantic slave trade, okay, in which people will be taken, all right, captured. Africans will always be capturing Africans, all right, bring them to the coast and selling them, selling people, okay? Portuguese will take people, enslaved peoples, and bring them to the Americas. All right, they'll bring them first to Brazil to work on these sugar plantations. Okay, and eventually they will make their ways up into the Caribbean and eventually to the United States. All right, or the colonies. All right, you need to understand that the Portuguese are going to start this slave trade, but certainly not just going to be them. Okay. The other thing that the Portuguese do is that they actually, by forcing that trade not to be free anymore, they're actually going to lead to the collapse of some of these civilizations. So a lot of these city-states I'm sorry guys, this should say East Africa, okay? A lot of those former city-states that we talked about, Kilwa, Zanzibar, all those little independent city-states in East Africa, they're actually going to collapse because Portugal will pretty much choke them out, right? Before, trade was free. Now the Portuguese have complete domination of it, okay? All right, so now we're gonna move on to the Spanish. Let me move my, I hope my camera's not blocking this guy's face because because he is quite a looker, let me say. All right, guys, so Spanish sponsored explorations. So you guys all know the story when Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492 and all that fun stuff. So again, this is really only going to be possible in 1492, well, because of the Reconquista. Okay, so again, when the Reconquista ends in 1492, all of the Muslims are going to be driven out of Spain. And so Ferdinand and Isabella, who are the king and queen of Spain, are actually going to reunite this area, okay? And they're going to want to jump right ahead into trade. All right, so this guy right here, all right, love him or hate him, you got to know who he is. Christopher Columbus is an Italian, I guess an Italian merchant sailor who is going to convince Isabella and Ferdinand to fund his journey. Okay, he thinks he knows exactly where where he can get into India. Okay, he knows the latitude of about where India is. He thinks rather than going around Africa, there should just be a way to circle it. Okay. Now, I know you all think that at this time, everyone believes in a flat earth, but that's not true. At this point, Christopher Columbus does not believe in a flat earth. Neither does Ferdinand and Isabella. Okay. Columbus convinces, even though he's Italian, he's not actually even Spanish, he convinces Isabella and Ferdinand to fund his journey. Okay. And in 1492, he crosses the Atlantic Ocean and he discovers Caribbean islands. Okay. Historians today think that the first island he visited was Hispaniola, but there's not a lot of agreement there. Okay. And he discovers the Americas. Okay. When I say this in quotes, because of course there were already people there, but again, we're talking about what the Europeans believe, and what they believe is that they've discovered a whole new world. Okay. So Christopher Columbus believes, he doesn't actually think his journeys are very successful, right? So he goes back to Spain, and Isabella and Ferdinand give him more money to go back. And, he believes that at some point while he's going, like right before he dies, he believes that he is going to be able to find this passage to India. And he never does. He dies. They never find this passage to India. At least in the way that he thought that they would, okay? But the other person you need to know, guys, is this one right here, Ferdinand Magellan, whose exploratory story is far more interesting than Christopher Columbus's, okay? So Ferdinand Magellan's actually gonna reach the Pacific Ocean, and he's gonna do something that we didn't even think about beforehand, all right? So while we have Da Gamo sailing around Africa into South Asia, that's great. But Ferdinand's actually going to go the longest route possible. Okay. So what this guy does is he and his crew are going to complete the first circumnavigation of the world. So he's going to follow Christopher Columbus's footsteps across the Atlantic Ocean. And what they think is if you go around what is today South America, you should maybe be able to find India on the other side. Okay. All right, let's try it. So Ferdinand Magellan and his crew go around South America and they get around Patagonia and Argentina. And they get to that kind of that cape, that sort of thing that we see in Africa. All right. And Ferdinand Magellan has a choice. He could turn around and go home and tell the Spanish that, hey, we found the cape, we know a way around, or he could keep going. So naturally, he feels that if he does not keep going, the Portuguese are going to beat the Spanish to it. Okay, so he keeps going. But the problem is, guys, is that while he goes around South America, he hits the Pacific Ocean, which, if you guys have ever looked at a map, the Pacific Ocean is enormous. All right, and now he has to actually cross that. So lots of bad things happen. He loses a lot of ships, he loses a lot of men, but he finally makes it across the Pacific Ocean, and he finally makes it into what we believe is the Philippines. Okay, and after some local people in the Philippines bring him and his crew back to life, essentially, these local people ask him to assist in fighting a war against a local island. Okay. And on day one of that battle, Ferdinand Magellan takes a poison dart to the neck. And so Magellan never makes it home, but his crew does. Okay. Ferdinand Magellan's crew travels all the way from Spain, around South America, across the Pacific Ocean, Philippines, okay? And eventually they're gonna make their way back home. So they are gonna be the first to completely navigate the entire world, okay? And I wanted you guys to see this for a minute. Let me just go ahead. Yeah, all right. This is a map of Ferdinand Magellan's first voyage around the world, guys. So again, he's going to be starting in Spain, and he's going to be all the way around South America, sadly going across the world's largest ocean. We don't exactly know where in the Philippines that they stopped and where Magellan was killed, but eventually the remainder of his crew is going to make it all the way across the Indian Ocean, around the Cape of Good Hope, back up into Africa and back to Spain. Okay. So what you need to know about this, guys, is that you have the first that we know of, navigation of the world, and it is done by Europeans. Okay. Europeans have created maps of the western coast of Africa. They've created maps of this area of the world. All right. They've created maps now of South America. All right. And this is going to be very helpful when it is time to go in and extract resources from these regions. Okay, let me go back. So you need to know some other European explorations. It's not just Portugal and Spain. France, England, and the Netherlands are also going to be conducting these important explorations. So again, guys, we're looking for a way to get to India and China. All right. And one way, if we're already over here in this side of this new world, naturally, why don't we attempt to look for a northwest passage, somewhere where up here we can cross and get over to the Pacific Ocean quicker. Okay. So that doesn't happen, as you can guess, but you need to know the famous journeys of Henry Hudson. Okay. Henry Hudson's going to be an English explorer. He's going to come over here, and he's going to explore what is, I guess, modern day New York now. Right, the Hudson River is actually named after this guy. All right, so again, other explorers, you're going to have France also doing some exploration. France will eventually kind of settle in this area of Canada, the Dutch as well. And all of this is going to lead to colonies. Okay, this is probably going to be more of a end of period 2, period 3 sort of importance. But you need to know that because these European nations are engaging in these voyages of exploration, they're also going to be leaving people behind and creating colonies. Okay. Our own nation is going to be founded by these colonies, right? So this is kind of just a world map of all of the voyages of exploration we've talked about, guys. So as I said, Da Gamo, so Da Gamo is going to make it around. He's going to make it to India. You'll have Magellan, so coming from Spain, coming down here, getting killed in the Philippines by a poison dart, because that's awesome. You also have Henry Hudson from England, going to be up here. So again, just an idea, like this is really major, guys. You're not going to see the level of voyage exploration coming out of Asia. Besides Admiral Jengy, which we talked about in period 1, which doesn't happen after he dies. China does not have these voyages of exploration, but Europe does. All right, all of these men are leaving on ships to explore portions of the world, and this is going to have major, major consequence. Okay, all of these men are going to be kind of the early versions of colonialism. We're going to have small colonies around the world spreading European religions, European culture, European ideas. Okay, and this is really important because this is paradigm shifting. Remember, in period one, guys, we were talking about China and India. I didn't mention those today at all, except as places that Europeans want to go. All right. But once Europeans are going to find new places, they're not going to care about getting to China and India anymore. So why is this all important, guys? This GIF, whatever, is you're going to see this quite a lot in my class. And as you can see from the year expansions, we're going to take it all the way until period 4. But I think it's a really good GIF to show you exactly what is happening here. Okay, 1492, this is what Europe has. But Europe expands, and Europe expands very quickly. Okay, so I would recommend just sitting around and watching this GIF for a little bit. What you need to understand, guys, is that for the first time in thousands of years, Europeans are leading the world in exploration and knowledge. Okay, as I said, at the end of Columbus, Magellan, da Gama's voyages, we have maps of the Western and Eastern African coasts, of the South American coasts, okay? We're getting maps of this area of Asia, okay, South Asia, the New World, and all of this stuff is gonna have huge payoffs for Europe, okay? Europe's gonna be able to form colonies and very quickly. Europe's gonna be able to extract resources from these colonies, okay? So while Europe is gonna get huge payoffs, the rest of the world is gonna pay a high price for these European explorations. And that is pretty much the major theme of period 2, okay? So guys, for the remainder of class, I will discuss my expectations for you. Those of you who are at home, just send me a quick email. But other than that, again, I'll stick around if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. But other than that, have a great day. Y'all were awesome today.